Welcome back, everyone. Ready to dive deep with us again?
Always excited to dive in.
Today, we're looking at something pretty fascinating, the power of word choice, specifically in the Qur'an.
Oh yeah, word choice is everything.
And we'll be exploring some excerpts from Divine Speech, a book by Nouman Ali Khan and Sharif Randhawa.
That's a great one. Really gets you thinking.
It does, and I think it's easy to get caught up in the big picture, like the stories and the overall message.
Right.
But sometimes we miss how the actual language itself adds so much to the meaning.
Exactly. Like, it's the difference between just reading a translation and actually grasping all those little nuances in the original.
Totally. So Divine Speech dives into that, right?
Yeah.
How the Quran uses language, even going beyond the typical classical Arabic stuff, to get its meaning across.
It does, and it shows how meticulously crafted it all is, how every word is carefully chosen.
Okay, so paint us a picture. What was the literary scene like back then when the Quran was revealed?
Well, imagine a world where poetry was king.
Ooh, I like it.
Right. And a poet's reputation lived or died by their skill with language. We're talking about classical Arabic, where even the smallest change in wording could flip the entire meaning of a verse on its head.
High stakes.
Oh, absolutely. The book actually mentions this story about a poet, Hassan ibn Thabit.
Okay.
He presented his work to a well-known critic, a Nabiga, and this guy, he'd just tear your work apart.
No mercy.
Nope. He'd analyze every single word choice, every subtle shade of meaning.
Talk about a tough crowd.
Yeah.
So people took language very seriously back then.
Oh, yeah. It was a sign of true mastery, being able to use words with that kind of precision, that artistry.
And then the Quran comes along?
Changes the whole game. Its language, so powerful, so captivating, it resonated with people instantly. Even those who opposed its message, they couldn't deny the sheer brilliance of its style.
Wow. So it's not just what the Quran says, but how it says it.
Exactly. And the Quran actually challenges its critics.
Oh, to what?
To produce something similar. And guess what? No one could. And what's amazing is that this mastery isn't subjective.
Right.
Even modern scholars, using all the tools of linguistics, they're blown away by the Quran's precision and depth.
Okay, I'm hooked. Give me some examples. What really stood out to you in the book?
Well, there's this fascinating example with Moses and the Israelites.
Oh, after they leave Egypt.
Yeah, exactly. Remember, they start complaining about the food God's providing.
Yeah, even after being freed from slavery, they're missing those cucumbers and onions.
Right. Classic case of wanting what you can't have. But what's interesting is how the Quran addresses their complaints. It tells them if they want that food so badly, they can go back to a settlement. And the word it uses is misran.
Misran.
Which sounds a lot like Misra, the word for Egypt.
Ah, so it's not just any settlement. It's subtly reminding them of the place they just escaped.
Exactly. And it gets even deeper. The Quran says humiliation and misery struck them for their ingratitude.
And those were the exact conditions they faced in Egypt.
Right. So the word choice isn't just about location. It's linking their ingratitude to their past suffering.
Like a be careful what you wish for kind of thing.
Exactly. And this shows us how the Quran uses language to layer meaning, make us think on different levels.
Wow, it really makes you realize that even seemingly simple word choices can completely change how we understand a text.
It really does.
So what other examples stood out?
Another interesting one is how Jesus addresses the Israelites.
Okay.
Most prophets in the Quran refer to their people as my people,
Right.
but Jesus uses children of Israel.
You know what? You're right. I do remember that. Why is that?
Well, there are a couple fascinating possibilities. First, it underlines that Jesus' mission was specifically to the Israelites, aligning with the Quran's view and even the Gospel of Matthew.
So it clarifies his role, sets him apart from prophets with a more universal message.
Exactly. And remember, the Quran affirms Jesus' miraculous birth,
Right.
born to Mary, no father. So children of Israel could also subtly acknowledge that he doesn't have that paternal lineage to claim anyone as his own people.
That's a really interesting point. I never would have caught that on my own.
It's pretty amazing, right? These subtle layers of meaning packed into word choices.
It is. It makes me want to go back and reread the Quran with a whole new perspective.
I bet. And trust me, the deeper you go, the more amazed you'll be. Let's move on to another fascinating aspect of word choice. How the Quran uses verb and noun forms.
Okay, I'm all ears. Tell me about this verb versus noun thing.
So in classical Arabic, verbs often have a sense of temporariness, while nouns feel more permanent. And the Quran plays with that beautifully to highlight certain ideas.
I see. Can you give me an example of that in action?
Sure. Think about how the Quran describes hypocrites. They might say, we believe, right, using a verb,
Uh-huh.
but then it describes them as mocking, using a noun.
So their claim of belief is temporary, while their mocking is an ingrained trait.
Exactly. It's like exposing their true colors by choosing words that emphasize how fleeting their belief is compared to that deeply rooted mockery.
Powerful stuff. It makes you realize how much thought went into every single word.
Oh, absolutely. And this isn't just for negative things. Look at how Prophet Jonah praising God in the whale, or the angels constantly glorifying God. They're described with muzabihin. That's the noun form.
Because their worship is continuous.
Exactly. It's not just a one-time thing. It's woven into who they are.
Beautiful way to put it.
And then there's this incredible example. God promises not to punish the people of Mecca while the Prophet Muhammad is among them. That promise is in verb form.
Right.
Makes sense, right? The Prophet wouldn't be there forever.
Right. Their protection was temporary.
Exactly. But then God says he won't punish them if they seek forgiveness, and that time it's the noun form of punishment.
So seeking forgiveness creates a permanent path to avoid punishment.
It does. And even within the same verse, it shifts back to the verb form for the act of seeking forgiveness. It's not about constantly begging, but sincerely doing it when needed, which leads to God's mercy.
These layers of meaning are incredible. It really opens up your understanding of the Qur'an.
It does, right. And we're just scratching the surface. Believe it or not, the Qur'an sometimes goes beyond even classical Arabic, creating its own unique distinctions between words.
Wait, really? I need to hear this. Give me an example.
Well, in classical Arabic, the words wata and awa, both meaning to counsel or enjoin, they were often used interchangeably.
Okay.
But the Qur'an uses them very distinctly.
So how does it separate those two?
Awa is for instructions given once, like inheritance rules or making wills.
Specific one-time things.
Exactly. But wa, that's always for repeated moral and religious guidance, emphasizing how those principles are meant for our whole lives.
So one's for specific instructions, the other's for continuous guidance. That's fascinating.
And it changes how we see the Quran's message. Now we can tell the difference between commands for specific situations and those timeless moral principles.
It's like unlocking a secret code.
Exactly. And there's this amazing exception that proves the rule. When the baby Jesus speaks, divinely inspired, he says God enjoined upon him prayer and charity, but it uses ow.
Because baby Jesus couldn't have received repeated instructions yet. He was just born.
Precisely. Such a tiny detail, but it shows how the Quran pays attention to context, to consistency. And that same careful word choice applies even to something as simple as rain.
Rain. Really, there are multiple ways to say rain in the Quran.
Oh yeah, there are several, but three stand out. Ma, gath, and ma. In classical Arabic, they were basically interchangeable, but the Quran gives them distinct connotations.
How so?
Well, ma, that's just generic water. The Quran uses it to emphasize rain as a blessing, a manifestation of divine mercy. It even compares it to revelation.
So ma is rain as a gift, life-giving.
Exactly. Then there's gaith, which comes from a root word meaning help or aid.
So that one focuses on the good things about rain, ending droughts, helping crops grow.
You got it. And then there's mayor, which is only used in negative contexts. It highlights the destructive side of rain, like floods and hardship.
So even with rain, the Quran uses specific words to show different sides of the same thing.
Precisely. It paints a complete picture, acknowledging both the good and the potential consequences. And this careful choice extends even to the way it uses plurals for eyes and springs.
There's even more. This is amazing.
Both share the singular afrain, but the Quran consistently uses ayun for eyes and un for springs. This difference didn't even exist in classical Arabic.
So the Quran's making its own internal consistency, even where the language didn't have one.
Exactly. It shows its meticulous attention to detail and its internal harmony.
This is incredible. It really makes you appreciate how deep and complex the Quran's language is.
It does, and the Quran itself acknowledges this. It asks, do they not reflect on the Quran? If it had been from anyone other than God, they would have found in it much inconsistency.
It's like it's inviting us to really examine the text and appreciate how intricately it's structured.
Exactly. And as we've seen, that examination can unlock incredible insights into the meaning and intention behind every single word.
This deep dive has been truly eye-opening. I'm seeing the Quran in a whole new light.
It's a fantastic journey, isn't it? And there's always more to uncover.
Well, before we get carried away, we should probably wrap up this part. But don't worry, everyone. We'll be back for more in part 2.
So picking up where we left off, those unique word distinctions. The Qur'an even does this with something as simple as rain.
Rain. Really, how many ways can you say rain in Arabic?
Well, there are a few, but 3 are particularly interesting. Ma, yeth, and mar. Classical Arabic, they use them pretty much interchangeably, but the Qur'an, it gives each one a specific shade of meaning.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Lay it on me. What are the differences?
Well, ma is just your basic word for water, and the Qur'an often uses it to emphasize rain as a blessing, like a pure act of mercy from God.
Makes sense.
It even compares it to revelation.
Oh, wow. So ma is all about that gift, that life-giving aspect of rain.
Exactly. Then you've got kaith, which comes from a root meaning help or aid.
So that one focuses on the positive stuff, like ending droughts, helping crops to grow.
You got it. And then mar is interesting because the Quran only uses it in negative contexts.
Really?
Yeah, it highlights that potential for destruction, floods, hardship.
So even with rain, it's using these specific words to show different sides of the same thing.
It is. It gives you that complete picture, both the blessing and the potential downsides. And this careful choice of words, it even extends to the way the Quran uses specific plurals for eyes and springs.
Okay, now I know there's got to be a story here. I'm all ears.
Both eyes and springs, they share that same singular form, ain't it? But the Quran always uses ayun for eyes and uyun for springs. And get this distinction wasn't even a thing in classical Arabic.
No way. So the Quran is creating its own internal consistency, even where the language didn't have one before.
Precisely. And it shows how meticulously crafted it is, how internally harmonious.
Mind-blowing. This really makes you appreciate just how deep and complex the Quran's language is.
It does, doesn't it? And the Quran itself even acknowledges this. It asks, do they not reflect on the Quran? If it had been from anyone other than God, they would have found in it much inconsistency.
It's like a direct challenge to really examine the text closely and see how intricately it's all put together.
Exactly. And as we've been talking about, that examination can lead to amazing insights about the meaning behind each word, the intention.
This deep dive has been truly eye-opening. It's like I'm seeing the Quran with fresh eyes now.
It's a fascinating journey, and it never ends. There's always more to discover. And luckily for us, there are some fantastic resources out there for anyone who wants to keep exploring.
Oh, absolutely. Nouman Ali Khan's Amazed by the Quran series on YouTube. That's a great one for anyone who wants to dive deeper into all these linguistic details.
It is. It really breaks things down in an engaging way.
So for all you word nerds and knowledge seekers out there, keep asking those questions, keep digging deeper, and you'll be amazed at what you find. There's a whole world of hidden treasures within the words we encounter. And that's all the time we have for today. But don't worry, we'll be back for a final wrap-up in part 3.
It's amazing to think that every single word in the Quran was chosen so carefully.
It really is. It's like this giant tapestry where every thread is important to the overall design, the meaning.
It really is. And I think all of this, exploring the word choice, it gives us a whole new way to engage with the Quran.
Yeah.
It's not just about reading the words anymore. It's about really savoring them, thinking about those nuances, appreciating the artistry.
Absolutely. It's like we've been handed this key to unlock these hidden treasures within the text, treasures we might have missed before.
Exactly. And knowing this, how do you think it might change the way you read and understand the Quran?
Oh, I know I won't ever read it the same way again.
Right.
It's like I've been given this new lens to see its beauty and complexity.
That's what's so incredible about it. There's always more to discover, more layers to peel back. And thankfully, there's some great resources out there if you want to keep going on this journey of linguistic exploration.
Oh, absolutely. Resources like Nouman Ali Khan's Amazed by the Quran series on YouTube. That's fantastic for anyone who wants to dive deeper into all these fascinating linguistic details.
Yeah, it's a great starting point. Really engaging and insightful.
Well, I can definitely say this deep dive has left me feeling a sense of awe.
Yeah.
It's inspiring to see how much thought, how much care went into creating such a powerful and enduring text.
It really is. And I think as we continue to explore these linguistic nuances, to appreciate them, we start to understand not just the Quran better, but language itself,
Yeah.
its beauty and complexity.
That's a beautiful way to put it. So to all our fellow word nerds out there, to everyone who loves to learn, keep diving deep, Keep questioning, and you'll be amazed by what you discover. Until next time, happy exploring.